Creepy Room in My Ancestral Village Home. Posted by Mac27inch. I don't know if it belongs here, but still, long post warning. Had to detail the narrative to get a better understanding. I am attaching pictures of the original house and its layout to better understand the experience and narrative. Hope you find it interesting. Hi, I'm from India, the eastern part of the country precisely. I am a skeptic, tending to be a non-believer of the paranormal, but sometimes there are things that you just can't pass off with your skepticism. So my family from my mother's side were wealthy landowners once. I am talking back about 200 to 300 years ago. Most of the landed properties are gone following our independence, but what we still own is a large mansion before that time. Now this is located in a village in the rural Chotanagpur plateau of the Indian subcontinent, and it's also the last house before the land opens up to arid, sparsely vegetated landscape, along with some hillocks in the distance. This land still belongs to us, so it was used for agriculture but not anymore. Now being the last house itself is scary, and that too, some 500-year-old mansion, but when I was younger, in the 90s, our family used to visit the place every year in the winter. Summers were too hot and arid, and so did others in the family. My grandparents were 3 brothers and a sister, to have a reunion of sorts. I always enjoyed the place of sorts, being away from the hustle and bustle, but gradually, the older generation passed away and our families became distant as we too started to grow up. Now the important part of the experience is the mansion. The property had 3 buildings, the mansion forming one side, a much recent building on the right making another perimeter, a cattle shed to the right making another perimeter, and lastly, an entrance walled gate completing the perimeter with an open courtyard in the center. Now coming to the mansion, it had 10 rooms, huge ones with 30 feet even more high ceilings and similar sized rooms. 5 in each floor along with a toilet and corridor leading up to the rooms. Now the room in concern is on the first floor. It's the last room when one comes up through the stairs. I had always had a creepy feeling going into that room, be it day or night, but sometimes I had to go in, but the full house always assured me I would go in running and come out running too. On the walls there were old photographs. Framed, and particularly one photo scared me the most. It was a girl of her teens. A black and white old photo, but the creepy thing being, it always seemed to look at you, no matter where in the room you were. The eyes seemed to move and the photo I felt was alive. For better understanding, the layout of the mansion and the mansion itself. Now flash forward a few more years. In the summer of 2004, after my class 10 board exams, I decided to visit the place alone. I had always gone there with my parents. The members staying there at that time were my grandfather in his late 70s, an unmarried uncle, and the longtime caretaker cook. Just 3 men in a property of over 20 rooms. Now coming to the rooms again, our building ended on both sides with round rooms. The one on the first floor was my grandfather's, and the other was used as a guest room. The uncle too stayed on the first floor in another room. In the ground floor, one room was for the caretaker, and the others were kept locked. Don't know why. There was another room on the first floor that is kept under lock, the room adjacent to the creepy room. I tried to peek inside of the locked room many times, but only could see the old furniture and stuff dumped into it, but I could swear that the room wasn't empty of presence. As many a times I heard strange noises coming out of the room, from moving furniture to groans. I hated going to the first floor alone, from as long as I can remember. Now again coming back, so I was left with 2 rooms only on the first floor. The other building had the kitchen and the living room. The other rooms were locked too. One another round room that overlooked the vast expanse of barren land from the windows, that started from a few inches above the floor to about 10 feet high, and many a times I had witnessed odd things on the land that I couldn't fathom at that age, and there were rumors in the village that witches used to gather in these land at night to perform dark magic. The fires I would see at night I attributed them to witches going by the legend. What it could have been was will-o'-the-wisp. So I turned the room down, as the fires were more etched in my memory, and with that, ended up staying in the creepy room. Not having gone there recently, most of the experience I had forgotten, so it wasn't a problem when I had been put up in the room, but the photo of the girl was still there, and had a similar chill run down my spine. But I was older, and much more rational. I quickly put the thought away. In villages, nightfall means the end of the day, and most families would go to bed by 7:30 to 8. Ours was no exception. Uncle, who owned a pharmacy there, would return by 6:30 to 7, and we would have our dinner by 8, then off to bed. The room had a 4-poster bed, which seemed as old as the house itself. There wasn't much furniture other than a table and an almirah, which had a huge lock on it. So I got on the bed, but I couldn't sleep at that time, so I would spend my time reading. I love reading anything that I could get my hands on. But every time I would get immersed in reading, something would break my concentration. I cannot put a finger to what exactly was it, but again, it would take another 10 to 15 minutes before I could go back to reading. First couple of days went by very smoothly, except the reading part, and slowly I was falling into the early to bed routine. I unconsciously started spending less and less time in the room apart from the sleeping time. I would wander about the village, the moor-type landscape, taking the cattle to graze, but spend time in the house. Even the lazy afternoons were creepy as now I think of it. But the things escalated after I started spending time away from the room. At night I would hear weird noise coming from the adjacent locked room, which I always believed to be rats. But there was scratching sound and moving of furniture. Still, I didn't pay much heed. But after that, when I would put out the light and go to bed, weird feelings would grip me. Sorrow and despair would feel me out of nowhere. The weird part being the photo could be made out in the darkness. I thought I could even see the eyes fixed upon me. The bamboo forest behind the house didn't help either, with a weird rustling and occasional hissing of snakes. But I would fall asleep. But I would be woken up each night, unexpectedly. Don't know why, but at the same hour, between 2 to 2:30 in the morning. This was a time before I had my cell phone, so a torch and an alarm clock would be the only source of time and light I had. But when I wake up, I could swear that it was someone that was with me in the room, sometimes even on the bed. If I was laying on a side, I would have this feeling that if I turned, I would see someone lying beside me. The hairs on your neck senses it, and I could never, not a single time, had the courage to turn to look. I seemed to get frozen wide awake. This happened a couple more days, then it escalated one more beat. This time I was woken to that same feeling, but a tube light, fluorescent light, would flicker even when the light was switched off. I couldn't tell anyone, as I didn't want to get ridiculed, but kept on going through the same stuff for almost a fortnight before finally leaving for my home. During the stay I checked the tube light and it was working fine the other times but that period. I would lay there till dawn broke each day before I could go to sleep again. I kept mum about my experience for almost a decade before I told it to my girlfriend. Then during a family gathering, my girlfriend brought up the topic in front of my parents, and they were taken aback. It was then when I learned that I wasn't the only one feeling it. My mother has always felt it from when she was young. She never would go into that room hence. Later, my father too experienced the same, and we would always stay in the other round guest room. I also learned that day who the girl was in the photo. My grandfather had another sister who had died in her teens in the 1950s due to cholera, and the room was hers, even the bed too. It was the same bed where she breathed her last. I haven't gone back to the house since, not because of the encounter, but due to my life taking me away from the city. Now, I stay in a metropolitan city and could only dream of going back there. And seriously, I want to go back, to learn what the presence wanted to communicate. if not interact. But don't know whether my cynicism would help in the contact anymore, but would love to go back. Me and my coworker were talking to the same tenant at the same time. Two completely different conversations. Posted by Angry American 0-2. Okay, this literally just happened to me, and I'm still extremely confused. For the sake of privacy, we will call the tenant Anna Johnson. Backstory. Yesterday, a new tenant went through the purchase of a storage unit online. We called her and verified her info such as her name, number, address along with her DL number. This morning, we realized she never signed the DocuSign lease. I call her and get no ring. Just silence. Kinda weird, but has happened before. Call again and I go to voicemail and leave her a message asking her to call back and we can verify her info and e-sign the lease for her. Just now, she calls back. My property manager answers and she says she was called by me and was calling back to walk through the DocuSign lease process. We are doing things electronically with the pandemic. Here's where things start getting weird. When I realized who was calling, I took over the phone call. As soon as I did this, both our phones started screeching with feedback. When I stopped talking, the feedback stopped. When my manager would talk, nothing. But since he didn't know about this situation, I took back over and immediately, the phone started freaking out again. So starting to get annoyed thinking our landlines were malfunctioning, I called her back on our company's cell phone. Once again, I got 0 ringtones or dial tones and hung up slightly creeped out at this point. Still thinking it may be weird phone issues, I called her back and it rang. I called her back and it rang and she answered. I immediately apologized and said our phones were messing up, and with a very confused tone she said, "Oh, that's okay. What's up?" Slightly confused myself at this point, I started pulling up her account to bring up the lease. At this point, my manager gets a call on the landline, and as soon as he answers, the phones go crazy with feedback again, and he immediately hangs up. Feeling slightly weirded out, more than confused or creeped out, I continue with my phone call. Then out of nowhere, I get a phone call from the same number I was already talking to. Thinking the call had dropped, I answered and apologized again. Anna apologized, but my face went flush at this point. It was a different voice, but still sounded the same in a weird way. She said, and I quote, "I just called and got hung up on," referring to the call my manager got while I was supposedly talking to Anna on the store's cell phone. At this point, I just hand the phone off sufficiently confused and creeped the hell out. During this phone call with the second Anna, some weird things came up. 1. She said they, referring to the call center, got her name wrong. It wasn't Anna, it was redacted. It's important to note that Anna signed up online. When we asked for her last name, it was still Johnson. At this point, I'm feeling really uneasy. Like an uneasy I can't explain. Kind of like the same feeling you get when you have deja vu. 2. After hanging up, we both look at each other like, WTF is going on? And look at the call logs. Each call was the same number, at times talking at the same time to the same person, or number, I guess. 3. After not knowing what to think, we realized we never even went over the lease. At some point, the phone call and interaction just phased out, and my manager hung up. 4. She just came into the store in the middle of me writing this. My manager is helping her so I can continue writing this. She came in due to the phone calls not going through and being hung up on after hearing a bad echo. 5. We asked for her DL at this point to verify nothing sketchy is going on. And guess what? It wasn't Anna Johnson. It was redacted Johnson. Who the fuck is Anna? Did I just talk to the same person from alternate timelines? What the actual fuck is going on? Both had different voices, but still very much sounded the same. And on top of this, my coworker, when I walked in this morning, was like, "Why were you driving past the building this morning before pulling in?" I was running late for work and barely made it on time. Edit. Checked my bank account when I got home and it was $666.66.
Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe for more videos.